Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us today. We're so glad that you're here. You know, the Women's Forum is a community of professional women that comes together to support the personal, the professional, and the financial success of one another so that we can all live empowered, fulfilling lives.
So we have a really wonderful program for you today. I know you'll be inspired and you'll be able to take away a few nuggets so that you can use them in your life to create change and enrich it in ways that matter to you. So sit back and relax and enjoy the program.
I think this is such a relevant topic, particularly to this incredible group of high-performing women, because boundaries become a very important topic when you are managing all of the things that you're managing when you come to the table as a high-performing working woman, perhaps working mother and wife, etc. I think if I were to poll all of you, 100% of you would say that boundaries are indeed an important part of your life. I will not poll you though, because the second question I would ask is, how well are you doing with that? And I can't imagine that a large percentage of us, myself included, would admit that we're doing a really stand-up job in honoring those boundaries. So, you know, I thought today a good topic to bring to the table was, you know, how are we doing with this? One thing I want to do before we even get started is I want to do a quick exercise with you. This is going to be highly interactive. So what I want you to do is grab a pen and paper for me. And your first exercise is going to be, and I'm going to stop share real quick and grab my chat and then share again. So your first exercise, what it's going to be is I want you to write down, if everything was taken from you tomorrow, everything you own, everything you have, but there was one thing you could not surrender, what would it be? So I want one thing that you would never surrender no matter what. Now that could be a person, a group of people, it could be a character trait, it could be anything you want. Faith, family, friends, your children, integrity, you know, whatever it would be. And I would like you, oh, you beat me to it. I would like you to share that with the group on the chat, but I also want you to write it down and own it on a sheet of paper. So I see family, faith, kids. No surprise that we're seeing a lot of family and faith here. Dogs, me too. Kids, sisters, your family, your mother, time outdoors. I love it. These are excellent answers. Keep them coming. Family, family, family. You're seeing kind of a theme here, right? Usually people say this is the thing they never surrender no matter what. Family, and generally we see faith as well in there. And I love those of you who included dogs. Dogs are part of my family too, absolutely. So thank you for that. We are going to come back to this. So I want you to hang on to this, right? Because it's such an important part of talking about boundaries. This webinar itself, and I see my health in there. That's a good one. This webinar was built upon the premise that we bring our whole selves to work, right? And especially now more than ever, that is so true. We live in this 24/7 hyper-connected world. We are always under pressure to do more, to have more, to be on, to perform at our best. Don't forget to eat well and sleep well and get your healthy snacks and, you know, meditate 30 minutes a day. So much pressure to perform at our best. And more than ever, I do feel like we are challenged to operate in a world that's forcing this new cohabitation for a lot of us of personal and business life under one roof, which creates a friction that a lot of us have never felt before. And even, you know, for me, I've been working from home for my whole life, 15 years now in my career. And it still is exacerbated, this new way of working, constant Zooms, et cetera. And then all of that sort of intensified if you have kids at home or a partner or a home to take care of. And sometimes it's just hard to find the energy to keep up, right? And in our company, we believe that we are unique integrated energy systems. And we believe our sense of purpose and core values, who we are at our core, what matters most, enables us to show up at our best and strive toward balance. We don't actually achieve balance, that's a whole other conversation, but we strive toward it. We also believe that when you have the right boundaries in place, we can fuel a sense of meaning, and work should fuel a sense of meaning in your daily life as well. But we can't find that sense of meaning or the energy to show up at our best personally and professionally without being intentional about designing systems of growth and recovery that we put into place to manage energy and show up at our best. And when I say systems of growth and recovery, I mean boundaries. When I say systems of growth, I mean time to grow ourselves intellectually, research, catch up, be creative, be innovative. When I say systems of recovery, breathe, get a moment during the day, disconnect from work, connect with the people who matter. But the only way to create sustained high performance. And when I say performance, I mean, we're a company called Performance on Purpose. We don't necessarily mean the business metrics of performing, doing your job well. That's part of it. We mean your ability to show up at your best personally and professionally daily. And the only way to create that kind of sustained high performance in our daily life is to design and protect boundaries to put into play. So boundaries themselves, to Nancy's point, they create the space to protect our most important asset, us, right? They also help us communicate our needs at work and at home. They give us space to protect our energy. And when you look at research around boundaries, when you put them in place and they're healthy and you're honoring them, you're less overwhelmed. You're less likely to experience daily stress, or the magnitude of that stress is perceived as less. You're more confident. You have higher self-esteem. You have stronger relationships. When we're talking about work-related boundaries in particular, work-related boundaries are a way for you to define for yourself and for other people how much of yourself you're willing to give to your career. And it also helps you kind of guide and inform relationships that you have at work, with your colleagues, your bosses, your direct reports, even your clients, who you could probably agree with me can sometimes be a little invasive on boundaries, right? If we don't set them and honor them. So healthy work boundaries really make the difference between professional fulfillment and burnout. And for those of us with teams and employees, they truly make the difference between a team who is engaged and a team who is disengaged. And it's really hard to hold that line, isn't it? Why is it so hard to honor boundaries? Because I think logically we can all agree on everything I just said. But I think the reason it's so hard is that a lot of us, some of us on this call, have never created or thought about boundaries before, never sat down to be intentional about this conversation. And then there's this other layer where we live in a world, particularly here in American culture, where dying to self, giving to others, having a servant heart is a glorified concept, and that is a good thing. So this is a yes and here. It's not a bad thing, but it blurs that line. I saw some of you in the chat beforehand kind of mentioning that you want to give to others, but it also makes it hard to hold the line. And then the other layer that we have here is, again, American culture. We sort of equate building business and being a high performer at work with what? Burning the candle at both ends. Hustling, sacrificing now for the promise of success later. And boundaries are often in this kind of mix, the last thing that we hold. And then, on top of that, when we are stressed, when we are stressed, it adds this layer of difficulty to the mix. It's very difficult when we're under stress to see situations authentically and to hold that line. When we feel overwhelmed, our brain starts to shift to see everything in front of us, our to-do lists, our deliverables, our projects, our problems, even people, as a threat. And this tends to lead to these predictable, vicious thought patterns. I don't have time. If I take time for myself, I'll get behind. I have too much on my plate. I'm not enough. I can't make everything happen. And so we start to form these stories in our head as well. So this is why I feel like boundaries are a much more important concept than we may think in relationship to our ability to perform at the high level we want to be performing at. Not to mention at the same time staying happy, purposeful, maintaining strong relationships in the meantime. So why do I talk about values? The reason I bring core values into this relationship and conversation is because I very much believe that they are interrelated. You can't have one without the other. To me, core values help us understand who we are. They also help us understand other people. And they create, when you have clarity in this area, clear coordinates to keep our life on a path toward meaning and purpose. So values are like the GPS coordinates for our life. Values, to be specific, are what you believe and how you behave to help achieve a life of purpose. So where your core values are your coordinates, your life coordinates, your boundaries are the guardrails that you put into place to make sure you don't get off course, to make sure you get there. An agile, resilient person has the vision of who they want to be, clarity of values, and then they create the right environment, boundaries, guardrails, to be that person more of the time. Values really also, as an aside, help us truly understand why sometimes we see things differently than other people. This can explain a lot of friction that we have in our life with others. If you think about the last time somebody irked you or you got in an argument or whatever it might have been, my guess is that your core values and that person's core values were not in alignment. They had some friction between them. This can explain a whole lot out there: politics, religion, relationships, how we parent, how we manage our daily work, why two people can tackle the same project on a team and have completely different ideas about how they should get there. All of this is really based on what we value most. So I'm going to stop talking and we're going to start doing. What I would like to do first is actually get us some clarity around values. This exercise that we're going to do, fair warning, lots of words on the screen about to hit you. It goes against all my principles of PowerPoint, but I figured I would give you the more values that I could put up there on the screen, the better. What I would like you to do in this exercise, I'm going to put you on a little bit of a time crunch. I'm doing this intentionally because I want you to go with your gut. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to identify your core values. In the first minute, I'd like you to scan that list of words. You might already know them, so you could just sit back and relax for the 2 minutes. But I want you to scan that list of words and write down the words that really mean a lot to you, that you think they could be that 1 or 2 most important core values. And in the second minute, you're going to narrow that down to 2. I don't even remember what book it was, but one of the Brene Brown books I've read, she did this exercise and I was like, oh my gosh, narrowing it down is so hard. I have to do that. I have to try it. So I'm going to give you that 2 minutes to do this, okay? So I want you to read through that. I'm going to set my little timer here, and we'll get to work. What are your core values? First minute, you're just writing down the words that you feel are most important, that stick out. And of course, I'm going to ask you to share them on the chat when you feel like you have your top 2. Nora knew it right away. Freedom and joy. That's awesome. Those are great ones. I put mine up there. I cheated. I had lots of time. See another one: love and faith, integrity and gratefulness. Oh, these are beautiful. If we had a half-day session together, I'd put all these on a whiteboard so you could see how diverse and wonderful this group was. Advocacy and diversity. Oh my gosh, great. Faith and family, love, learning, adventure, generosity. Caring and faith, accountability and thoughtfulness. Fairness and kindness, faith and family, family and health. Mindfulness and accountability. These are beautiful. By the way, we have 30 seconds to narrow down to 2. Sorry, I should have mentioned that first minute was up. Joy and reliability, family and health. Look at these great words, appreciation and compassion. I challenge you to write these on a Post-it note or an index card and put them somewhere you can see all the time. Open-mindedness and relationships, faith and gratefulness, curiosity and commitment. Beautiful. So time's up. We've got 2 minutes. So share your core values: loyalty, cheerfulness, generosity. If this was really hard and you have 20 and you're sitting there scratching your head, we're going to send you the slide deck. And so you can take this slide and you can sit and you can noodle on it for a while. I have some clients, it takes them 2-3 weeks to figure this out. So no pressure here. A little pressure, but no pressure to have an exact answer right now. Optimism and relationships, empathy and loyalty with a side of peace and a lot of family. I like that. So the reason this is kind of tough, and service and generosity, mine are service and relationships. The reason I wanted you to narrow down to 2, you might have had a list of 10 or so, is that, and just for clarity, this is my opinion, all of the words that you wrote down, they are things that have to be into place to inform and uphold your core values. So for me, for example, service and relationships are my top 2. There's nothing more important to me, but I have to have a few things in place in order to do that. Faith, love, thoughtfulness, compassion. And it might be the exact opposite for you. There's no wrong answer here. This is all yes ands and not either ors. Relationships and joy, I love it. And community and integrity. So your top 2 are your top 2. And all of these other qualities sort of just, if it's like a tree, they just sort of fall underneath them. Thank you for doing this. I hope this gives you a little bit of clarity around what's important. Remember, this is your GPS coordinates to living that life full of purpose, fulfilling that purpose. One quick last note on the core values, and then we're going to get into boundaries and do some work. I'm going to propose a mindset shift here. What if who you are at your core, these 2 words that you have committed to, defines how you organize your life and where you choose to invest your energy? What if every day you woke up and you read those 2 words and that's how you chose where to focus your energy? So if somebody asked you a request, can you do this quick project, and you're already overloaded, you could go back to those core values and say, is this in alignment with my values or not? Or is it going to get me off course? What if this shift in perspective could result in greater performance across all metrics of your life? Because guess what? The research is out there that it will. Sometimes our actions and behaviors, they don't align with what really matters most. I don't think that's because you don't value them. I think it's because we don't have systems in place to protect them. And that's where boundaries really come into play. So that being said, we're going to get to work on our next exercise, which is boundaries. We're going to start defining boundaries. So this exercise, you're going to see a chart here. This is the next thing you're going to write down on your sheet of paper. I'm going to walk you through a little bit. We're going to explore where we currently have good boundaries and where we maybe need a better system in place, okay? So as I'm talking, I'd like for you to write down this chart and those titles, and some of you can just start filling in right away. For those of you who need a little bit more of a walkthrough, I'm going to give you that right now. So first column, where do you have boundaries in play already? Some of you maybe are thinking none, zero, zip, nilch. I don't necessarily think that that's true. So I want to push you a little bit on that one. Do you exercise regularly, semi-regularly? Do you sleep well? Do you try to get enough sleep? 7 to 9 hours of sleep is the recommendation. Do you try to watch what you're eating? Would you drop everything for the health and well-being of a child or a partner or significant other? If that's the case, you have boundaries in play. And we want you to think about those current boundaries. Do you have any boundaries around disconnecting from work after work? Or is that maybe the area that needs to go into the second column? So for example, I fiercely protect exercise. The only time I can do it is 5:30 to 6:30 in the morning. So there be it. That is my boundary. I fiercely protect it. In order to protect that boundary, I have to have a boundary around sleep. And so I protect my sleep. I try to go to bed early and make sure I get at least 7 hours a night so that I can wake up and exercise, so that I can fulfill my core values of service and relationship in my daily work. I can't be asleep at the wheel delivering talks like this, right? And so all of that has to be in play. I also have a non-negotiable about working on Sundays. I will not do it. Yeah, we're a faith-filled family. We go to church on Sundays. That is our day for family. So that's a boundary. So I'm trying to kind of jog your memory a little bit here and think about what boundaries do you have in place. And again, circle the non-negotiables that you would never break. And then, and feel free to share those in the chat kind of as we're going so people can kind of create conversation here. And I know you shared a little bit of it before we started. So then, excuse me, the second column, we're going to face a little bit of truth, and we're going to identify where we have weak or maybe non-existent boundaries. This is the area that we want to pay attention to work on, right? So I'm not so great, to Melinda's point, at shutting down at the end of the night, at turning off work, turning off my work brain. And so I have to have clear boundaries and routines in place to help me remember to do that. Not so great at saying no either. So that is a boundary that I need to work on. And so I would put that in the second column. So where do you have non-existent personal and work-related boundaries? In that third column, this is an important one. We're going to identify what emotions, what thoughts, persistent thoughts, what behaviors surface for you when your boundaries are violated, either by yourself or by other people. So how do you feel in those moments? Guilt, shame, fear, irritability with yourself or others, disengagement, a burnout, negative self-talk. You know, what is in there that maybe surfaces for you? Do you stop listening to your inner voice, your private voice? Is that a symptom of violating a boundary because you get overwhelmed? So Gina said, overwhelm and frustration. Perfect. Put it in there. The reason we want to identify this. Okay, Nora said, I get annoyed by my students when I don't protect time well. Yeah. And it's not them, is it? Technically, maybe sometimes, but it's not necessarily them. So if I don't have a boundary around closing my laptop and my phone when my son walks in the room to ask me a question, and I don't give him my full and best, we're not designed to multitask. So what does that do to our brain? It triggers the stress response. And in that moment, I'm reactive and I snap at him. It has nothing to do with him. It has to do with me not having clear boundaries. Now, on the flip side of that, my children also need to know when I have a boundary around when they are allowed or not allowed to enter a room when I'm working. So we have a little color coordinated system after COVID. Red on my door means do not enter, do not make noise, put the dogs away. Yellow means enter with caution, knock, and green means obviously you can come right in. So it's a balance. It's a yes and, not an either or. And somebody said, yep, you're annoyed. Yeah, when you protect your time, absolutely. So what are those signs and symptoms? This is really important. Somebody said angry. And the reason this is important is because these are the cues. This is the awareness building part that signals and tells you, hey, you know what? I think a boundary is being violated here. So we need to pay attention to this. You're just telling your brain that with these signs, symptoms, red flags, right? Maybe it's a behavior. Maybe you give something up, sleep, time with family, exercise, healthy eating. Maybe you feel anxious. Oh, somebody just heard that. Anxious, right? So the last column that we want, this is the important one. This is the take action. All of this is insight building. And that fourth one is our action taking here. What do we plan to do about it? What new boundaries need to be in place? Or what routines or triggers or actions can you take to solidify and create better boundaries, to move that second column to the first column? There's a lot that you can do, but I would love to hear, as I'm kind of going through a few of them, what examples you may have, things that you can do. How do you, if you're really good at disconnecting from work at the end of the day, for example, what are you doing? Let us shamelessly steal that idea. Barbara says, set a morning intention. Love it. That's perfect. It's a great way to start your day and a great way to honor and protect boundaries. I have a couple of them I want to share with you. Let me make sure the first one pops up here because I got the chat right in the way. First one. This is just ideas. And I got a couple coming in. So batch time for emails and work. Awesome. Protecting time for emails. Separate work and phone computer. I like that. Close your office door and walk away. So very hard to do, but it's such a good action to take. Put your phone down before dinner and try not to look at it after that. That's great. Put it away, put it in a drawer, put it in the car, lock it in the car. Have a daily morning routine where you review goals, dreams, etc., so that I know what aligns and what doesn't. Things that don't align get a no. Awesome job. That's such a good one. Meditating at night outside with eyes open, looking up at the stars, coming inside and putting the phone down and going to sleep. What a great cue. This is a Pavlov response here. You're triggering and telling your brain it's time to not think about work anymore. So I love that. These are such great ideas. Just to give you a couple and keep them coming, I'm just going to sort of talk it through a little bit. Calendaring, such a powerful and often underutilized strategy. Put it in your calendar. Whatever it is that you would try to protect, I want you to make sure that you're putting that in there. So whether it is setting time for taking a lunch, blocking time for exercise, maybe you talk to your business partner or your team, 25-minute meetings instead of 30, 15-minute meetings instead of an hour, whatever those are, I want you to leverage that calendar option and block your time. If you block it, you're more likely to honor them. And then the next one we have is communication. I don't want you to miss this. Your boundaries are only as strong as your ability to communicate them. Your boundaries are only as strong as your ability to communicate them. So it's really important that you know your boundaries, but you also make sure that you're telling other people what those boundaries are. So communicate them to partners, to team members, to best friends, to children, whatever they may be. The more that you talk about them, the more likely people are going to honor them. So I have to be, for example, with my business partner, and to me, we have to be really respectful of those boundaries, but I don't know whether or not I can call him unless I understand when his children's practices are, when at night he plans to sign off. And so I need to make sure that I'm clear on his boundaries so that I don't violate them. So communication is really a very, very important part of boundary setting. And somebody mentioned this a little bit ago, just managing email, no calls, no meetings. We have several clients who have implemented this company-wide, and it's been incredibly valuable to see the shift this has had in the energy of the workplace and in the culture of the workplace. So what if you are blocking time for heads down work, creative work, disconnection from work altogether, whatever it is you want to do? I try to block half a day once a week so that I can just really be with my work and not be on back-to-back calls and meetings, right? So another thing that you can do is create space for quiet time in your head. I could get really nerdy on you with the neuroscience here, but there's areas of your brain where creativity, innovation, and problem solving live. And really, they're truly most accessible when we're doing nothing at all. And so trying to block time for nothingness, like meditation, or just simply quiet, taking a walk, whatever it is, you're actually tapping into performance aspects of your performance that maybe you haven't before. The other part of this is that you learn to listen to your inner voice a little bit better when you block that time for quiet. We spend 99% of our life outwardly focused, don't we? On everybody else. A lot of us mentioned that in the chat already. And so block 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you have. Hide in the bathroom if you have to for that quiet mental time where you're just sitting with your thoughts and trying to listen to that private voice. Catchphrases. Couldn't think of anything better that started with C, but what I really mean by catchphrases is just having one-liners that are prepared and ready when somebody puts you on the spot and asks you for something. What's that auto response that you plan to give them when you're really not sure if you want to take on something else, or maybe somebody's asking you to violate a boundary? Maybe somebody calls you late at night or texts you, do you have a second? And so these catchphrases can build a little bit of buffer time so that you can thoughtfully respond and maybe honor and respect a boundary, and also just sort of, help you be able to respect and keep firm boundaries you have in place. Maybe if somebody's trying to get in contact with you on the weekends or in the nights or early mornings. And so I love to respond to clients with, I hear you, I see you, I saw your message, but listen, I'm at my son's soccer game. I'm going to get back to you first thing Monday morning, whatever it might be. Try to have those catchphrases in play and ready so that you're not sort of fumbling around with your words or even worse, saying yes too quickly to something. 2 more. Core values. Goes without saying, having alignment in this area. Again, weighing your decisions against these core values. Very, very important. And then the last one would be just making sure that you are disconnecting to connect. So building in time into your calendar or creating cues or routines. Some people already said putting your phones away during dinner and not picking them up again. To disconnect from tech, disconnect from your emails, disconnect from everything. And like I was saying before, sometimes we need to be a little bit more intentional about that. And so whatever that cue or that routine is for you that you can put into play to help you create that buffer. We've all been there when you walk into a room or you're at a dinner and somebody's on their phone and talking to you. It doesn't feel good, right? It also doesn't honor your core values 9 times out of 10. And so what routines do you have in place to really, truly disconnect at the end of the day so that you can have that time to really honor and nurture the things that matter to you? So those are a lot of them. I hope you guys shared some more ideas in the chat. I do think this is an important thing to kind of sit on a little bit and think about later, build out this chart. When I give this chart to my clients, at first they're really frustrated with me, and then they always say, that was really helpful. That was a good exercise for me to do. And almost always they kind of pick one thing that they can walk away with and honor that boundary a little bit better. All right, so let's see. Last thing we're gonna do is just a little bit of reflection time. I am very big on reflection. I think learning only happens in reflection, really. And so what I want you to do right now is just take a minute or two and jot down any ahas you might have had. Whether it was, wow, yeah, I actually have some pretty good boundaries in play, or, oh my gosh, I have a little bit of work to do in this area, or maybe some ideas that you saw in the chat that you want to steal, shamelessly steal. And then the second thing I want you to do, and I told you we'd come back to this, is I want you to get a little gut check here. There was one thing you told me that you would not surrender no matter what. Are you ensuring that that is happening? Are your boundaries ensuring that you are protecting and not giving that up? Or are you unintentionally giving that thing, that person up daily? Now, for some of us, that's a bit of a gut check. And if you feel a little convicted by that, pay attention to it. Listen to what that's trying to tell you and brainstorm how to make sure that doesn't happen. And then the last thing I want you to reflect on a little bit is, what's one small thing you can do? One small step you can take that's too small to fail, right? A la BJ Fogg and Tiny Habits. We want to make sure we're taking small steps in the right direction, because that's where sustainable behavior change really comes into play. What is one thing that you can do to better protect your boundaries, guardrails, and better align with your core values. And if you would please share that with us in the chat. I want you to share with your friends and peers here, what's that one tiny thing you can do? Maybe it's 2 days a week, you just block some time on your calendar for some downtime. Whatever it is, make it too small to fail. So give yourself a minute, reflect a little bit, get real specific. Communicate boundaries more clearly. Yeah, okay. How, when, do it, right? So get real specific, take action. Those of you who are going to suggest blocking time on the calendar, I am giving you permission. Get it out now. Pull up that calendar, block the time. Do it now quickly before you log off and you jump on your email and you forget. These are great suggestions I'm seeing coming across. So I hope that you're reading them. Blocking time, absolutely on the calendar. I'm seeing a whole lot of that. And creating space, right? Creating space, having that one-liner. I'm seeing a couple people say that. Before you say yes to something, that whole, let me get back to you on that, but in a nice, clear, direct, and compassionate way. How can you do that? One more question for you, and then I'm going to just close it up. One more question is this, because this is the elephant in the room. When is it okay to violate a boundary? For yourself or for someone else to violate it for you? That's a very important question you have to have with yourself, your team members, your partner. When is it okay? Because we are storytellers. And we tend to tell stories about the world and justify. So we break one little boundary, what's going to happen? It's going to domino effect. I saw a couple people mention that in the chat right before we started. So when is it okay? I challenge you, get with your team, get with your business partner, get with your partner, your spouse, whatever it is. Have that conversation. I'm going to give you a quick story on that. My husband works for a hospital in Orlando for the finance department there. And when COVID hit, this hospital is so good about work-life boundaries. Family they're very family friendly. When COVID hit, he was put on a task force for PPE procurement for all the clinical teams, doctors, nurses, clinical staff. And he had to report every day for 3 weeks from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to a little tiny room, 6 feet apart, with the CMO and chief medical officer and all those people, and they had to, their entire job that day was to find and secure PPE around the world for their doctors and teams. That was on top of his regular job. And so I did not see him for 3 weeks. Sometimes he would sleep there. And this was a time when a boundary should be violated, because it's so aligned with my core values and his core values to make sure we were protecting the people protecting us and our families and our community. And so it was a time when it was not even a thought, violate that boundary. So not all examples are that dramatic, but I'm just trying to give you examples of having those conversations and thinking about, when is it okay to do this? And you're going to have to go back to your core values to answer that question. So something to think about.
Lauren, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, clearly for the greater good.
Yeah.
For all of humanity versus, yeah.
Absolutely, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer, but to be a little bit more challenging, what happens when a prospective client texts you on a Saturday night and wants an answer right away? And then it gets a little more sticky, doesn't it? And so I do think it's an important question to ask yourself. You, Barbara, and Nancy talking to each other about it. These are tough questions. Then there's no wrong answer, I don't think, and there's no right. It's just what's right for you in that moment. To me, protecting time for quiet space to listen to my own thoughts becomes critical in that way, because then I have a little bit more of that authentic voice and I can recognize when I'm trying to justify something.
Well, I really do think that if there is a need to pause and prioritize and violate a boundary, that you then also need to really set some firm boundaries to recover, right? Or to do other things to compensate, because otherwise you can continually do that, and it's probably not a healthy pattern to fall into, right? To
Yeah.
justify that. And not many pandemics happen, hopefully, knock on wood there. But I mean, this is a unique situation for
Yeah.
sure, right?
But I'm so glad you said that, because the hospital did give him a day off, a couple of days actually, where he could work from home and breathe a little bit. So I think you're right. Your effort when you violate that boundary and work really hard or whatever it is should probably have a follow up of some sort of recovery. We're very big on that in our company. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, well, I think it's important for all of us, because otherwise we just get these cycles of justification and a continual violation of boundaries. And I was thinking that the one area that I get challenged in, especially with a young adult child, is shifting those boundaries that you used to have with your child as a priority, but helping her establish her own boundaries and make decisions and not do things for them. So really looking at the boundaries of problem solving just to be a resource and help them learn how to do that for themselves.
Oh, that's a tough one too, because I'm sure you want to jump in there and solve that problem for them. So creating a boundary is probably incredibly important, isn't it?
And difficult.
And difficult. Yeah, and honoring the boundaries. See, we could talk all day long about how important they are. Honoring them is a totally different story. So again, yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
I was just going to say, we have a question about someone, Gail is still looking for a catchphrase or default answer when put on the spot. Any other suggestions other than I see you, I hear you?
For me, one of them is, can you give me 24 hours? I just need to look at a few things on my calendar. That's usually for a work type request. And honestly, sometimes I'm just getting more comfortable saying, can I think about it for a little bit? I think people tend to respect your boundaries when you are honest about them.
One thing that's personally helped me, because I always feel like if I'm saying no, I'm letting someone down. I just express a lot of gratitude for them asking me to do something, and then explain my why, I can't do it. But to at least start out on this positive energy and expression of gratitude, I think it personally helps me, and it sets a nicer tone when I have to deliver the why. It won't work.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, bookending it with gratitude. I like that.
Yeah.
And then Jen George said, can I get back to you? I want to make sure I can give 100% to what you need. That's perfect.
That's great.
I don't think it needs to be overly complicated, right? I think it just needs to be clear and direct. I love the way Thrive Global refers to it as compassionate directness. You can't have one without the other. You have to be compassionate in your response, your request, but you also have to be direct. That always stuck with me.
So someone mentioned that, Tony mentioned, people get angry when you tell them about your boundaries. So what's a good way of expressing that? It may be a certain culture and an expectation, but maybe people don't appreciate boundaries and think that's just woo-woo.
To me, I mean, this is just me, and I'd love to see what other people have in the chat, but it's not my issue if they have a problem with my boundary, especially if I do feel like I'm being realistic about it, so especially if it's something. I was just on the phone with a client yesterday, and her boss was asking her for meetings on a Sunday. She works a regular 9 to 5, and it was every week in a row. And so, she thinks that her boss thinks the notion of boundaries is a little silly when she's in the role that this woman is in, which is executive leadership. I told her that's not your problem what your boss thinks. Your Sunday is your Sunday, and you need to be really direct that you're not going to violate that. So I don't know if that helps. If anyone else has any suggestions, I try not to think about if somebody doesn't respect or honor or thinks it's silly, the notion that, I can't really help them with that. My guess is that our core values are not in alignment, probably.
I think a really important comment that someone made was setting expectations. And so maybe if you haven't been good about setting boundaries in the past, but are appreciating it's something you need to do more of, that you almost need to reset so that someone is like, oh, Barbara always says yes. What the heck, or
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, sometimes a little humility of, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to set better boundaries, be a little more connected at home. I feel like with most people that would probably go a long way. But I do think managing expectations is definitely part of this conversation.
And I think about if you make it about the other person. Somebody had said earlier that, I can't do it right now because I can't give you 100%. What person would want 50% of an effort type of thing?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
As I wrap it up, I do want to end with Deanna's comment, which is so important for all of us, is that don't get trapped into another task for yourself. If you say, I need 24 hours, I mean, sometimes that can create more anxiety and then you have more activity. If you need to nip it in the bud, we just got to start nipping in the bud. I presume, Lauren, once you start getting better at setting boundaries, it's like any muscle, it's just easier to respond authentically right away.
Yeah, that is actually what I was going to kind of just leave as a final thought is, you told me that this year for you, your theme is about living with courage, right? And to me, it takes courage to communicate and protect your boundaries fiercely. And when we are able to practice that in the little moments, I do think it builds that muscle of being able to weather the worst storms when we train in these small areas of honoring boundaries. I do think alignment with values, clarity there, and protecting boundaries really shows its worth when we practice it in these small moments. So, that's sort of my last thought on that is don't forget, values are GPS coordinates, boundaries are the guardrails, and these small moments matter a lot.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren. This has been such a great interactive, hands-on, engaging experience, and to really help us identify our core values and link them to boundaries, which is an alignment that I never really thought of bringing those together before. And it's really been an aha moment for me.